So hello, my name is Howard Barouxis, and I'm a managing director here at Valenta. And welcome to the Valenta Insider Series. The Valenta Insider Series is a bi-weekly webinar and podcast where we discuss top industry trends and technology. Today, we are joined by Vivek Singh of Hopstack and one of our own managing partners, Jake Day. We're going to talk about digital transformation, warehouse transformation, plus the explosion in e-commerce today. Before we start talking and get on with our panel, I'd like to do some brief introductions. Vivek, if you could please introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Thank you, Howard. Great to be here. And hello to everyone listening in. My background has been I'm the co-founder and CEO at Hopstack, and we are a fulfillment operating system provider as a software. My background has been in the supply chain and logistics space for the longest amount of time. Spent the first decade working in various parts of the US for the likes of Monsanto, Hitachi, Tyson Foods, Bloomberg, to name a few, optimizing or building and optimizing their supply chain and fulfillment tech. And that sort of led me into the second phase of my career, which was sort of building a more modern warehouse software that is in tune with the demands of the e-commerce infrastructure, as well as this whole idea behind being omni-channel in today's day and age for any business to survive. So that's what we are building at Hopstack, and we are trying to enable all small and medium-sized businesses to have the access to same level of technology as some of the big box retailers do.
Great. Thanks for that intro, Vivek. Very clear. Jake, you want to do your intro?
Sure. My name is Jake Day. Been with Valenta for a couple of years. It's been about 8 months now or so. But I spent most of my career, 9 years, I won't say most, but a good bit of it working for Walmart, doing a lot of Lean Six Sigma process improvement type work. Did a lot in the supply chain logistics area as well. So really excited to have this conversation. After that, I did private consulting for a little while before starting my journey with Valenta. Like what Vivek said, I have a passion for small and mid-sized businesses. So I've done this process consulting and Lean Six Sigma work for large businesses. So really happy to be a part of providing solutions, big box solutions to small and mid-sized organizations. And well, I'm really excited to have this conversation today.
Great. Well, I know you had a lot of questions for Vivek when we were prepping for the call. If you want to kick it off, let's start talking about warehouse technology, 3PL, e-commerce, and all that.
Sure. Yeah. So Vivek, let's talk a little bit about what you've seen in the term of the growth of e-commerce over the last 5 years. I know there's been a lot of changes in the expectations in terms of consumers' expectations around accuracy and speed. Can you tell us a little bit about how it's evolved over the last 5 years?
Absolutely. And Jake, it's not been hidden, right? E-commerce growth has been right in our face. We have seen the likes of Amazon, Walmart, and some of the larger retailers having a very, very large online presence. And the first wave of e-commerce was driven by them, right? It was growing very rapidly compared to any other industry, about 14-15% every year. But that totally changed by the recent pandemic, right? When people were not forced to not go into any physical location, the only option they had was to buy stuff online. And that sort of catapulted e-commerce to a different level, right? Now, over the last couple of years, it has grown by 40-50%. And that means that e-commerce today stands $1 trillion just in the US, and which is about 25% of all retail sales. And before we know it, it will get to 50%. What it means also is the way of doing business is changing. The way of fulfilling orders is changing. You're no longer walking in as a consumer and buying stuff which is available in the store, right? So you're placing orders online and you're expecting it to be delivered in almost no time. And some of this customer expectations were driven by the amazing efficiency of some of those big box retailers. Like you name Walmart, you name Amazon. They have gotten to a phase where they're delivering items in 2 days across the country, if not the same day, right? So if you are a small and medium-sized business, you need to be able to keep up with that kind of customer expectations, right? And that is that is the impact that e-commerce is having on the entire industry, not just the small and medium business, but the entire industry as a whole. So operational efficiency has become the core focus, right? And it's not just about top line, it's about how you become extremely efficient to meet the customer expectations that have been hyped up by the likes of Amazon and Walmart.
Yeah, the pandemic changed so much, including the consumer behavior. Yeah, and the e-commerce. I mean, when you're talking about growing 50%, I mean, that's amazing. I think that's faster than almost anybody thought that it would
Absolutely.
grow.
Yeah.
So I know this has put a lot of pressure on warehouses. How have they been able to keep up with the explosion in e-commerce?
Yeah, so a lot of them have not been, right? And which is why you will see in the near term, you will see a consolidation of consumers happening in favor of big box retailers, because they have the capability and technology to be able to keep up with the demands, right? But if you think of how can some of the small and mid-sized businesses survive, so you'll be surprised to know that about 85% of these businesses are still operating on legacy technology, if not pen and paper and emails, right? And that's not the way you will be able to compete with some of these big box retailers. So tech adoption and digital transformation is the very first step in this process for any business to upgrade itself to the level that they can cater to the modern consumer, right? And one of the very first thing that will happen is businesses shopping for software, and those software could be anything from an order management suite to a warehouse management to inventory management, that allows them to sell on multiple channels, that allows them to fulfill across multiple channels. So this is the adoption of technology is one aspect, or rather the most critical aspect of them, to be able to meet the pressure imposed by e-commerce. And the second aspect is obviously a lot of process improvement stuff, right? So there is technology and there is processes. How can they will start to look into areas about how can they improve the layout of their warehouses, how can they improve the onboarding and hiring processes for their warehouse associates, how can they meet or reduce the attrition of people so that they can cater to the seasonal demands of holidays, the holiday time frame. So you'll see a lot of these focus going back on productivity, processes, and tech adoption. These are the two high-level things that all the businesses will start to focus on in the midterm and also in the long run.
Yeah, and as a process guy, I have a follow-up question to that. So can you talk to me a little bit about maybe some specific changes in fulfillment processes that warehouses have had to adopt in order to compete?
Absolutely. I think if you think about a typical warehouse, right, there are primarily three kind of activities happening there, right? There is inbound, where you receive items from your suppliers or the returns. Then there is outbound, which is basically all about fulfilling the orders to consumers. And then there is everything in between, which is storage and handling, right? So when we talk about inbound processes, it has all become about speed and accuracy, right? So when you receive items from suppliers in today's day and age, it cannot take you 7 days to make that item available for the consumer to order, right? So your time to make an item available on your online stores has to be extremely efficient, which means your associates or your workers at the warehouse doing inbound should be enabled with tools and technologies so that they can fast track the inbound process. Similarly, in storage and handling, how folks should be and empowered with tools where they know, okay, how can they maximize space within the warehouse? How can they sort of like place the inventory in such a way that the retrieval during an outbound process is much faster, right? How can they perhaps use the they use the space in such an optimal way that not a lot of empty spaces lying around, A, and B, the time to find products during any order shipping process becomes as minimal as possible, right? So there are a lot of things around processes, to changing layout, onboarding the right folks, empowering people with the right tools, is going to sort of drive lot of the incremental improvements from where the businesses are today.
Gotcha. Yeah, I really like empowering people with tools, which kind of leads me to my next question. What type of key labor challenges do you see being faced by warehouses today?
Yeah, I think labor is a very essential part, as we all know, and 65% of an operating expense for any warehouse or fulfillment operation is related to labor cost, right? And if you look at how the labor market in the US has been, the retail jobs have gone down over the years, but there has been significant rise in warehousing job, and they will continue to do so. What it means is like everyone is competing for a limited amount of labor, and that's been one of the biggest challenge, the shortage of labor, and that has been exacerbated by some external shocks, like pandemic literally made it very difficult for businesses to hire warehouse labor, right? So these has been this has been some significant challenges, and obviously there's a very high turnover and attrition in this industry. That is another challenge, right? So these are some of the key challenges that warehouses face today, and obviously there are ways to sort of minimize the impact of this. Like I keep saying, right, use the right tools and technologies, and one of the things that how do you make your warehouse a safer place for, because it's a high risk job. You're lifting loads, you're moving around a lot, you walk 5 to 6 miles a day inside a warehouse lifting loads. So how do you make it even more safer? And that will reduce the attrition rate. So these are some of the challenges, and these and certain things that the businesses can do to overcome these challenges.
Yeah, the labor shortage as well, it's impacted warehouse managers and really kind of forced them to figure out how to use their labor more efficiently. Do you have any thoughts on how to best use employees' time to maximize output in terms of some of the common tasks in a warehouse, like picking, packing, sorting, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think of a person's job inside a warehouse, right, he or she spends about 95% of the time just moving around, right? And it's a crazy stat. If you are a typical Amazon warehouse, they are really large DCs. An individual can walk anywhere between 8 to 11 miles a day, right? So how can you use tools and technologies to minimize that travel time? A very simple example today is whenever your warehouse software generates an outbound picking list, you have all the data to leverage sophisticated algorithms so that your outbound picking sequence is so optimized that people have to travel as fewer steps as possible to fulfill an order or a group of orders, right? That is just one example. And then people today walk around with mobile computers, barcode scanning guns in one hand, and they pick items in other hands. While it seems very unharming, but you'll be surprised to know that it is actually one of the unsafest thing to do inside a warehouse, right? Where you're operating just with one hand and using a scanning gun on the other. So how can you provide technology that can make them even more safer, right? For example, they could have a wearable scanner, right, on their wrists or on their fingers. There are tools out there that can make them operate in a very hands-free environment. A good chunk of labor inside a warehouse is always lifting loads. So posture ergonomics is a key concern, right? So there are exoskeleton that is available today that companies can provide to their workforce to ensure that they're always maintaining the right posture while lifting loads. So these are some of the things that warehouses can do or businesses can do today to ensure that their warehouse workforce is efficient and safe. And if they make that happen, I can guarantee that the attrition rates will go down.
Yeah, as a process guy, and Lean Six Sigma guy, right? Transportation waste in a warehouse is usually one of the biggest forms of waste, and it's so visible as well.
Yeah.
In the motion waste that you're talking about, also sounds like that you have a lot of good tools and technologies to reduce that. And definitely love what you said about safety as well. For any warehouse managers on here, safety is the top priority. You've got to keep your workforce safe. So sounds like you guys have some really good technology to drive that. Now, in terms of reverse logistics, how does Hopstack help businesses improve their return rates with better fulfillment?
Return rates returns in any businesses are sort of a silent killer on your balance sheet, right? So if you think of an average return rate for retailers is about 8%, but when you talk about online retailers only, it goes as high as up to 20%, and it can only increase if you have inefficient processes. So it's sort of a return is a double-edged sword. Like you have to you need to provide better return possibilities to your customers, so that it is a proven fact that if you provide a better return capabilities, your customer lifetime value over time increases, and the consumers will have a better relationship with your business. And that's why Amazon wins all the time in online retail, because they have such a simple and efficient return process. It doesn't take more than 2 clicks for me to return any item to Amazon, right? The way we look at reducing the return rates is being very sort of preventive as opposed to being reactive, right? How can we use technology to stop the errors penetrating deeper into the shipment, so that it eventually ends up into returns? If you look at two of the biggest contribution of returns today, they happen during the picking and packing process, whether a wrong size or a wrong item was picked, or whether it was incorrectly packed and that led to damage, right? So these are the two key things that eventually contribute to the return rate. And we, as a software company, we pay a very high emphasis on reducing errors upfront in the outbound fulfillment process. So we provide guidelines on the different screens during the process of during the fulfillment process, whether it's whether it's a picker picking an item from the shelf, whether a packer that is packing an item into the shipment box or a poly bag. We always provide all the information necessary for them to ensure that they're packing the right item, they're packing it in the correct manner, to minimize the return rates as much as possible. And the correlation is very proven, right? If you do not have an order fulfillment error, your return rates tends to go down significantly.
Yeah, so eliminating a lot of those errors on the front end that are caused by the businesses that would drive a return, sending the wrong product out or the such, but then also making a return process so efficient that even if the customer no longer has to worry about, hey, do I want to buy this or not? They go ahead and click the purchase button, knowing that the return process will be efficient if they decide that they need to return it later. Could be a competitive
you hit the deal on that, right? It is extremely important to have a very efficient return process.
Yeah, very nice. So talk to me a little bit about robotic process automation and how you can use robotic automation to improve productivity and reduce errors in relation to what you offer.
So if you look at any decent sized business today, right, or a warehouse with any sort of a volume that does about few thousand orders a day, there are always motions that are very repeatable, right? And while all the high-end sci-fi tech tells you that robots are here to replace humans in the warehouses, but I don't think that's going to happen, and I think we are decades away from that, even if that's a possibility. what you will see increasingly over time that humans and robots working in tandem inside a fulfillment center to ensure that the process is smooth, efficient, and safe, right? And if you zoom out a little bit, you can categorize any activity inside a warehouse in two different motions, right? Either you are doing a hand motion, which is picking stuff from one place or stowing it away in a shelf, or you are doing a feet motion, that is moving an item from point A to point B, right? These are the only two steps, right? And increasingly what you will see is robots being deployed where this process, whether it is the hand motion or whether it's a feet motion, uh, as long as once it becomes very repeatable and predictable, you will see robots being used more and more, and then the humans moving on to doing a lot more value added stuff that requires more on the job cognitive thinking and all of that, right? So that's how I see things moving. And the state of the robotic automation today is that the robots have gotten better at the feet motion, which is moving stuff from point A to point B, while they still struggle in this hand motion. So you will see that a lot of robotic companies talk about goods to person picking technology, right? Where the person is actually picking items off the shelf and then is just placing it on a mobile robot that moves it to another location, right? So that's I see them both working in tandem over the at least over the next decade.
Yeah, I've seen that as well. There's a lot of talk when you talk about robots in particular. To your point, a lot of people are afraid of them because they think robots are here to replace jobs and replace humans. And I've been involved in several projects that have involved bringing robots in or completely automating processes. And what I will say from my experience is it does make those processes super efficient, but at the same time, there's so much more innovation, right, that a company wants to do that they can't do because they don't have people freed up to drive that innovation. Right. So what I'm actually seeing is that, yeah, let's automate this process with robots. Let's free these people up to do this great big value add innovation that's going to drive a huge competitive advantage for the organization. So.
Absolutely. And I think the cost of robotic adoption is still not at a point or not at an inflection point where it would justify at the ROI for a small and medium business. I think they can still drive a lot of value just by software-based digital transformation and as well as process improvements.
So we're hearing a lot about data viability today and how that drives a competitive advantage. Can you tell us a little bit about why data viability is almost like a superpower for today's warehouses and fulfillment managers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think data has become a competitive age. Well, not data, but the insights driven by that data, right, is a competitive age. So anyone as a business owner or a fulfillment manager or a warehouse manager really needs to use the insightful data as an asset to be able to identify choke points and inefficiencies in their processes and sort of react or be more proactive rather than being reactive. And I'll give you very specific examples here, right? So we spoke about today as a business you're selling on multiple channels, you're fulfilling orders on multiple channels. So you almost you have you have more data than being generated than one can comprehend, and you can use literally software and machine learning capabilities to learn from those patterns and predict how much inventory you should be stocking, what sort of space utilization you should be maintaining, how can you plan for your labor for an upcoming demand, so you can forecast labor well ahead in time. You can actually visualize your picking and packing process in real time due to every data point being generated during a fulfillment action, and that will enable you to sort of see, okay, where the choke points are. Specifically, I will tell you about how our software has used data, right? So we actually look at, if we have to generate a picking sequence, how do we sort of optimize the route of a picker? Then sort of, if we get an order, we look at how should this order be prioritized? How should the task be allocated to various associates in the warehouse? All of that can be driven by a data engine, right? And that will make it lot more efficient, as opposed to people looking at what has happened in the past and then sort of analyzing it in spreadsheets and reacting it after the fact. And by the time so much time has elapsed, that the business dynamics would have changed, right? You have already fallen behind the curve.
Yeah, the ability to drive real-time insights, and to your point, not have to depend on an analyst looking at a spreadsheet, to drive real-time insights drives a huge competitive advantage. Absolutely. So how, you mentioned selling on multiple platforms, and that can cause some inventory opportunities for a lot of warehouses and even a lot of back rooms in e-commerce stores as well. How can businesses get a better handle on their inventory selling when they sell on multiple channels, or especially e-commerce marketplaces?
And inventory has been a problem no matter what, right? I mean, I'll be very honest. Like, if you basically randomly pick a business and they will say that they have an inventory problem, it's just been an Achilles heel for almost every business out there. And it again goes back to using the right tools and right technology to ensure that you have a better handle on inventory. Today, when you're selling on multiple channels, especially various online e-commerce channels or your own web store or your offline retail store, you're still fulfilling it from a more centralized approach, right? And in that case, what you need to be able to do is ensure that your inventory is synchronized with all these channels in real time. So just as an example, you may run into a situation, if you're not doing that, you may run into a situation where you have a same SKU being listed on Walmart and on Amazon, and you may receive duplicate orders and be unable to fulfill. That leads to a bad customer experience, and you will end up potentially losing that customer, right? So to avoid that, you need to have almost a real-time synchronization of your inventory across all the channels that you're selling to, right? And then comes about the fact capacity allocation. Sometimes you need your tools to suggest you almost that, okay, here is, you need to based on the patterns that we are seeing, you need to allocate 80% of your inventory to Amazon, or you need to allocate 40% of your inventory to that retail store or pop-up store in Manhattan. So a lot of this allocation decisions can also be driven by technology or the data engine that I keep speaking about. And the third part of this is maintaining the right level of inventory. And that is key. I think that is something that almost every industry struggles with. And the winner of this industry have almost aced that game. And that's where the operating leverage comes down to get the better handle on inventory, so that you don't understock and miss out on orders, and you don't overstock and block your necessary cash, right? And again, you can use tools powered by machine learning, AI, to come up with better forecasting algorithms, better demand planning algorithms. All of that can be leveraged to get a better handle on inventory.
Yeah, inventory again, from a Lean Six Sigma process improvement perspective, it's one of the big 8 forms of waste that you're always trying to drive down. And you mentioned pop-up stores. I've had some experience working with those as well. That can be quite a bit of an inventory challenge in itself. So again, I think the ability to play off what you mentioned in a previous answer, to have real-time insights, especially a pop-up store that might be temporary, a huge competitive advantage, I think. You've been in this industry for a while. You're definitely a forward thinker. So I'm interested in kind of where you see the future of warehousing and fulfillment going.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jake. And there are we keep talking about, and I see various macro and micro trends. And I'll talk about some of the macro trends to begin with. One is obviously, we keep talking about, or we keep hearing about omni-channel sales. That is in simple terms, the ability to sell wherever your customer is, whether they are on online platforms, whether they are in offline store, whether they are on social media. Just an ability to sell there is your omni-channel sales strategy. what we will see over the next few years is businesses striving for omni-channel fulfillment strategy, right? And that means being able to fulfill at the convenience of your customer, meeting where your customer is, right? And you'll see Amazon already doing that, and Walmart doing that in some in to great extent. Like, they have the ability to ship at your door. They provide you the flexibility to pick up at some of their in-store locations, and or even intermediate locations. So being able to fulfill where your customer finds convenience, that is going to be one macro trend that will drive the warehousing and fulfillment industry. The real-time visibility is obviously something that we are seeing happening a lot and lot. It started off with the entire supply chain, or from end to end, the supply chain leaders talking about getting real-time visibility into where their stuff is at any given point of time. Similarly, you will see that behavior transition into, or rather getting adopted into the four walls of your fulfillment centers, where how operations leader will talk about real-time visibility into fulfillment activities, and that will sort of again create drive the adoption of a lot of this real-time data technologies, right? There will be extreme focus on capacity utilization and productivity, there will be a sort of a demand for technology that can help any business increase their capacity, get the maximum use out of their every square footage inside a warehouse, right? And how can they get maximum productivity out of an individual without compromising on the safety standards, right? So that will be a key focus over the next few years. A lot of technology adoption happening there. And I want to talk about two more trends that I see happening. There's sort of almost a convergence of humans and machines working together. I think, like I said, humans would be working a lot of value-added stuff, robots on the repetitive stuff, and the software will function as the great bridge between man and machines, right? And the warehouse software of the future will provide businesses the ability to orchestrate all of this humans, machines seamlessly in sync, to ensure that they achieve the highest throughput inside a warehouse, right? So that is one another trend that I'm very confident that will happen over the next few years. And last but not the least is what I see is convergence of various software categories inside the warehouse or the fulfillment operation, right? You keep back in the day, or a few years ago, there was order management software, or there is order management, so there is inventory management, there is warehouse management, there is transportation management, warehouse control, warehouse execution. There are a lot of the softwares, but it also means they sort of contribute to this data silos that get generated into inside a business, and right, and then a lot of time is spent just sort of moving data from one system to another, and then additional effort in sort of driving insights from that. And I think a great convergence will happen where all of this will start merging into one umbrella, wherein you almost need like an iOS or an Android sort of a operating system for your warehouse. And this will be just the order management, the inventory management will just be sub-components of this operating system.
Yeah, it sounds like an exciting future. It sounds like, as a process consultant, the things that we've talked about today, what Hopstack solves for, the elimination of waste and the driving of efficiency, and especially where the future is going, right? It's really the ability to drive hyper innovation, right, in the supply chain. It's really exciting. Glad that we're partnering together. We'll definitely be recommending your services as I'm doing process consulting and the such. Howard, I want to leave a little bit of time left for some questions.
Yeah, sure. There's been a couple that came in, and Vivek, I mean, I really like the last answer about the future. I kind of like the merging of RPA and humans. We do a lot of work in digital transformation, and conversational AI really comes in there. So I really like that answer. Definitely open it up to the audience if you want to fire any more questions. We did get a couple that came in, and it was no surprise they're really kind of focused on SMBs because we're focused on the SMB space. The M can get pretty big for us in the SMB area, but the questions that we got were related to that area. And the first one was, Vivek, could you let us know how you think that SMBs can provide a similar fulfillment process as big box retailers? I mean, it's harder for SMBs to do that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there are two well, trends slash solutions that are emerging in that space. One of the things is just being able to, the technology or the legacy technology has never been focused on SMBs, and they were very enterprise focused, especially when it came to warehousing and fulfillment. And that's why it's not affordable for them to sort of invest in those technologies or sort of like invest in robotic automation, which is why the softwares need to reimagine. If today anyone is building a software for warehousing and fulfillment, they need to reimagine the accessibility and the affordability of that software. And that's one of the things we are doing, obviously trying to democratize the access of the operational efficiency tech for SMBs. So that is one thing, being SMBs having access to similar software that some of the big box retailers have. That is obviously one thing. And second thing is, obviously we will find a lot of SMBs that don't think fulfillment and logistics is a core of their business, and they will continuously looking to outsource. And when they do that, they will reach out to third party logistics company or 3PL, as we say. And if they do that, they should always have technology as their key decision making criteria in choosing the right 3PL partner. And they should really look for a 3PL that uses similar kind of technology, if not better, for them to be able to sleep peacefully at night, right? So that when they outsource their logistics operations, they know that, okay, it's being handled better because those guys are tech enabled. They can provide real-time visibility into every operation, all of that. So to summarize it briefly, having access to similar level of software and robotic tech, number one. Number two, outsourcing it to the right partner.
Okay. Actually, I think you answered the second question that we got. The first one was about SMBs having the same experience for customers. The second one that we got that I didn't even share with you was how do they meet the same fulfillment practices? But I think you answered both. So I think we're good in terms of audience questions. I have not seen anything else come in. Vivek, is there anything else you want to close us out with?
I think this was wonderful. So the conversation was great. We are aligned in terms of how we think about the market, how we think about where the small and medium-sized businesses should be going, and there are some exciting times ahead of us, and really looking forward to work together and solve some critical problems in the industry.
Well, you're definitely an interesting vendor for us to talk about with our clients. So thank you for being here. We really appreciate your time, and we'll be talking soon. And everybody else, thank you for joining us today.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.